What's up, fight fans from all around the world? Welcome back to the War Room. I am your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin, and I'm here with my fighting family, Malissa Smith. She is a women's boxing historian, and my boy, Mr. Eddie Goldman. We call him the conscious of combat sports. Folks, it has been one crazy, interesting week in boxing. I just have to say that. And we're here to bring you guys the insight and analysis from our team of boxing writers, Malissa and Eddie. But before we jump into this convo, you guys, please hit that like button and subscribe to our page. Our little family on the WAAR Sports family's growing. So we're over 200 and something odd subscribers now. We're trying to get to that Midas touch million subscribers. We can give you guys a beat down. Oh no. But look, Eddie, we are going to kick off with the heavyweights because you wrote a piece called "The Heavyweight Division is the Most Annoying Division in Boxing." So let's just start off with what you were trying to share with us, please.
Well, yeah, the fact is we're not seeing the top fights. And even when a fight was supposed to have been made between fighters that are generally regarded as both being in the top 10, Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte tests positive for drugs, for banned substances. And so a week before that fight, they had to decide, are they going to cancel the show with Joshua at the O2 Arena? He's the guy that sells that out. Or are they going to bring in a late replacement? And they brought in a late replacement, and Robert Helenius, who had fought just the previous week against a very low-level opponent. It was more of a sparring session. But Helenius is a guy that for years hasn't been a serious contender. I know it was a late replacement. They had to find somebody at the last minute. But it was just a joke to bring in a guy like Helenius, who the last time people saw him was last year being knocked out by Deontay Wilder with one punch in the first round.
Uh-huh.
So they bring him in, and predictably, Joshua is very, very tentative. And by the seventh round, he knocked him out cold with one punch. And there are actually photos of Helenius lying on the mat, motionless from both fights. And the guy's 39 years old. He's way, way past his prime. He's been knocked out by journeyman Gerald Washington, who's never been an elite fighter. So they put the show on. It was going to be a DAZN pay-per-view in the UK and Ireland, but they made it a regular DAZN. But still, it's an absolute joke. It's going on. Tyson Fury is fighting an MMA guy in October who has a record in professional boxing of 0-0-0, and that's going to be in Saudi Arabia. Fury is generally regarded not just as a WBC heavyweight champion, but the number one heavyweight in the world. Some people might put Usyk ahead of him, but he's generally at the top of that division. And he's fighting a guy that's never fought boxing professionally before. And even in MMA is not known as a real heavy puncher. It's an absolute joke that fight could be sanctioned, but they're going to Saudi Arabia, and they're apparently going to sanction that fight and let that go on under whatever governance the kingdom has over there, supposedly. And Usyk is fighting in a couple of weeks, really about a week, is mandatory Daniel Dubois. He's a huge favorite in that. It's his WBA mandatory. And they say Joshua is supposed to or might fight Wilder. Now everybody's talking about that. Nothing has been agreed to. Nothing has been signed. There's been no official statement from Wilder or his camp that, yeah, we want to do this fight. And his trainer has even said, well, we want to have another fight in October beforehand. How's he going to fight in October and then in January against Joshua in Saudi Arabia when the guy's only been fighting about once a year anyway? It's just utter nonsense. And in other divisions, we're seeing moves to have an undisputed champion. There are 4 now in men's boxing, although that's going to be reduced pretty soon. And there are 6 pending Baumgardner. We'll get to that a little later in women's boxing. And you can easily do it, theoretically anyway, in a heavyweight division to crown an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And the glamour, previously most prestigious division of boxing, by having Usyk fight Fury. But instead, Fury's decided to do this absurd fight, which is supposed to be a real fight under what they call boxing rules. Who knows what that is even going to mean? So there's just stagnation in the division, and the WBC could solve this by saying, you got to fight your mandatory or else they're going to strip you. But instead, they've just come out and said there is no mandatory. They previously ordered Wilder to fight Ruiz to decide a mandatory. They couldn't come to an agreement for financial and business reasons, and it is a dangerous fight for both guys. So they're not fighting. So instead of ordering a purse bid, the WBC said, okay, we withdraw them having to fight for mandatory, and in November we'll decide what exactly we want to do, which leads me to believe that if Joshua and Wilder sign to fight, they might say the winner of that is the mandatory for
the WBC.
For the WBC against Tyson Fury. Wilder's the favorite in that fight. So if Wilder wins that fight, we want to see a 4th fight between Fury and Wilder. It's not, that's not even sellable. It's just, the whole thing is just one thing after the other. And a lot of this is even after I wrote this article. It's just utterly absurd what's going on because of the governance. That's a theme we have to have in all of these things. Right. We discussed Dillian Whyte, Alicia Baumgardner, doping, and all this. The governance in boxing, which nobody wants to discuss and use that word. You could use all kinds of words. You could use any 4-letter word you want in boxing, but the one word you can't use is governance, because that would expose what's going on in the sport. You know, I just got to say this. In the United States alone, you have over 300 college programs, most of them graduate programs, in sports management. And every year they're graduating hundreds of these students. How many of them go into boxing? Even if they watch boxing, if they just take a look at it, they say, this is crazy, this is insane. And as the sport becomes more of a niche sport, fewer people are watching. There's less and less boxing on American television. Streaming is not making up for it. You only have really 2 networks in the United States, ESPN and Showtime, that are showing any boxing, and they are much more marginalized. And frankly, I think both of those sets of telecasts are really in jeopardy as these networks go about cost cutting and dropping programs all left and right all over the place, even ones that are very popular. So it's continues to spiral downward, and there are solutions to these things. Have the best fight the best. That's what people want to see, not just the boxing hardcores who know everything and are going to watch just about every fight that they can. The casual fan wants to know who's the best.
Listen, the casual fan who was watching Joshua fight was going to sleep and turning off the channel. I mean, we were on Twitter going 2-minute rounds, dude. Let's put 2-minute rounds. He didn't get awake till the 7th round when he knocked him out. How many shots did he throw? He had a punching bag in front of him. It was the opportunity to work on all the stuff he's been doing in the United States, right? He's like got a new trainer, and I'm here to move and slip and slide. Did you see him slip once? I didn't.
I just saw the knockout and what he did afterwards. You would have thought he won back the WBC belt. He was like,
I'm the man.
right.
I'm running out of the hell. I
Like, get
slept
your
better
ass
than
back in
that.
the ring. Get your ass back to camp.
I'm sorry. That really, it was like yawn. And people on social media going, imagine if we had to pay for this shite.
Right.
Right. Come on, dude.
You do if you saw it on the zone.
Yeah. So I pay my monthly for DAZN. And to your point about American television, there's Showtime and ESPN. There's never any regularity as to when there are fights. You never know.
Right.
Is it a Friday night? Is it a Saturday night? We don't know. And if it's Showtime, have they even had a women's fight this year? Maybe one.
I think
you
one.
will not see women on Showtime at all. And ESPN only shows two. You got Sinisa Estrada and Michaela Mayer. That's it. They're not showing anybody else. So effectively, the only way to see women box in the United States is either you subscribe to DAZN and you can see the fights that they're putting on from the UK or their Golden Boy fights, or you're watching local market streaming, which you're paying for on a per fight basis, or you're on Facebook.
Or you watch on Twitter.
Or you watch it on Twitter, or somebody's stealing it for you and has their phone in front of a camera and you're watching it on Instagram, and listening to their dog bark and,
right.
Oh, gee, honey, let's have another martini. Right? That's the state of boxing in the United States right now.
Right.
It's pathetic.
And this comes in terms of women fighters at a time when women's sports are growing all around the world.
Right.
There are incredible numbers coming out of the Women's World Cup going on in Australia and New Zealand. The Matildas, the Australian team, they didn't make it to the finals, but that's now a household word around the world. That's a team that's known around the world. But you have Showtime and PBC refuse to show women's boxing because of some 18th century view that Al Heyman
here's the thing, Eddie, they used to show it. It's not like they didn't do it before. They did. I just watched, I'm writing, I'm in the midst of my manuscript for my new book about the last 10 years in the sport. I just watched a show that had Layla McCarter in 2016 on Fox and a PBC card. Please. It was on television. So what happened in 7 years?
What happened? Where's the shift?
You had Heather Hardy fighting. You had
they're not on Fox. This is the whole point. PBC used to be on all these different networks. They bought the time.
But they were on Showtime too on those cards. That's what I don't get, Eddie.
I think he ran out of money. He ran out of money.
That's the only network left that shows them. They lost one contract after the other. This is something, and all these people saying this is such a great year for boxing. Do you see what's going on with this?
It's horrible.
Who said this was a great year for boxing?
But what you have is
all the cheerleaders, and so-called media members, are clowns.
Well, then they're not paying attention.
Oh, God,
they're not
Crawford,
paying attention.
Spence, yada yada yada. Okay, one fight.
As somebody who's not a boxing hardcore fan, who's the heavyweight champion of the world? Just ask them.
No, I'm just kidding.
They don't know. They don't even know what it is. They look at you and go, huh? What they will tell you about Josh Paul or whatever his name is, Jake Paul. They'll talk about him. That's who they'll talk about. Oh, he should fight Tyson Fury because they've heard of that. They've heard of Tyson Fury and they've heard of Jake Paul. And what they want to see is Jake Paul. That to them is boxing.
Huh. That is
or sad. Mike Tyson. They still think Mike Tyson is fighting.
Right. And they still think Layla Ali is a female boxer. Okay. Lord. It's the only one they ever heard of.
Lordy. But let's get into the shenanigans with this damn testing, and Alicia Baumgardner, who says that she popped positive. She took that test on, I believe, June
July
12th, July 12th, but
3 days before her fight.
3 days before her fight, and she popped clean after the fight.
Okay, she took she took a test on July 12th. The results did not come back till August 10th. Right. So just before the weekend.
They weren't even sent. That we'll get into this. That weren't even sent in to July 21st.
So how she had results from her other tests post, that's an interesting question, because we never saw that. All we had was I had a test.
Right, but was it from the same testing company?
No.
Yes,
no.
It was all drug-free sport.
Which the test she had on the 12th of July was sent in on the 21st, and the results came back on the 10th of August, and it showed positive for 2 different types of drugs.
All right.
She claims that she had two, and let me just finish. She claims she had 2 more tests after the fight that came clean. We have never seen those results. The only reason we have this result is Dan Raphael from ESPN put it out. He got a copy. He put it out.
He's not Top Rank got rid of him from ESPN.
Well, wherever he is these days,
right?
Independent.
If he's in, well, that's news to me. I didn't realize he left. But anyway, he put it out, but we have never seen the other 2 tests that she alleges were negative. And well, even if they were, so what? She could have peed it out by then.
Here's the whole problem. There's no uniform testing in boxing, period, even for championship fights. Baumgardner came in as the undisputed 130-pound champion with the 4 major belts, all this stuff. It was a championship fight by any definition that you're gonna make it on July the 15th. Okay? The Michigan Commission, which can do testing, did not do testing for this fight.
Eddie Hearn did.
Let's get into who did, didn't.
The promoter did
the Michigan testing. Unarmed Combat Commission says on its own document that they prohibit these controlled substances, and they list some of them. It's not entirely clear. They go, each contestant may be randomly or specifically selected by the commission's representative for a drug screening immediately before or after a contest at the promoter's expense. They didn't do it. The Michigan Commission is known as really one of the worst commissions in boxing for many years, with hometown and ridiculous decisions. A lot of people just said, we're not even going to go to Michigan anymore. So in the last couple of months, there's been a revival of boxing in Michigan with Clarissa Shields and then Alicia Baumgardner headlining cards in Detroit, in the new, for Clarissa Shields, and the new Little Caesars Arena, and this Masonic temple for Alicia Baumgardner. But still, the commission, which is supposed to be regulating this, and these are both championship fights, not the undercard fights, did no testing.
But
Alicia Baumgardner is, among her belts, is the WBC belt. They supposedly have, for the men, their clean boxing program and testing with VADA. The WBC and VADA did not do testing for the Baumgardner fight.
Right.
No,
they would have had to have separately paid for VADA to come in. They could have done it if you paid the money, but they're not part of the women apparently are not part of the clean boxing program.
Well, they are. Clarissa Shields
she said
is a member, and so is Alicia
I think she just did it on her own. I think because
let me tell you, WBC will not allow anyone who's a champion to fight unless they're a member of the program. And Alicia Baumgardner is a member of the clean boxing program with VADA. That having been said, Eddie Hearn Matchroom was the promoter of that fight, of her championship fight. They did not go with VADA. They used a different testing protocol.
So what?
He
How?
used
But if they're
the
supposed to
VADA
have VADA,
program.
how can you just dump VADA? Because
That I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. I do know that Alicia is a member of the VADA program. I do not know whether or not, and this needs to be teased out, whether Eddie Hearn went to WBC or any of the other sanctioning bodies to say, hey, look, we're not going to do the VADA testing. We're going to do the testing on our own. It's not, but we're going to test the boxers.
it's not
I
the
don't
same. It
know.
was not the same tests.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
So the point is that what we don't know are those details. If we go back to what Claressa Shields did a month ago in her fight in Detroit, it was absolutely the VADA program. They did the VADA program, and in fact, the thing with VADA is the test results are before the fight, and that's how they were able to discover that Hannah Gabriels had a positive test, and they got rid of her as an opponent and brought in someone else, precisely because of the VADA program. So you are absolutely correct, Eddie. It was not used in the way that that VADA works for the Baumgardner match. Eddie Hearn went his own way with Matchroom. Why he did that, whether or not he needed to or received permission from any of the sanctioning bodies to not use the VADA clean boxing program is unknown. I understand that it's a very expensive one, and he may not have wanted to pay for it.
Okay,
Yeah, but
well,
that's
look,
not supposed to be voluntary.
right. But listen, this is what's on the VADA testing. They posted this on July 22nd. It says all fighters enrolled in the WBC boxing clean boxing program are subject to year-round testing, but
Yes,
many enroll for additional testing eligibility leading up to a fight. And WBC Morrow, they tagged him, no U.S. commission or other sanctioning body subsidizes or offers this. So they must be charging whatever the fee is, but that fee should be paid for automatically by the promoter or by whoever, but not the fighter.
But
especially
they
in
didn't,
an undisputed bout. Come on.
They didn't
Right.
do it.
Did not.
The WBC even issued a statement. This is from their website. The adverse finding in question arose from a sample collection, an anti-doping test administered by Drug Free Sport and not as part of the WBC clean boxing program. Accordingly, the WBC will initiate a notification, investigation, and results management procedures for WBC World Championship bouts consistent with the WBC rules and regulations. So according to the rules and regulations, for this bout, a championship bout, you didn't have to have the clean boxing program. So it's more bullshit. They didn't cover this fight. Right. And the difference is not just in terms of who does the testing, because they're both going to the sample is going to be collected either by VADA or Drug Free Sport, and it's going to end up at a WADA laboratory. But it's a question of what testing goes on. And Drug Free Sport is a well-known organization. Yep. They do testing for the NFL, the NCAA, the NBA, the LPGA, the PGA, NASCAR, Major League Baseball, and they just recently started a horse racing testing because a lot of the horses get doped up. But they only did a urinalysis, no blood test. VADA will do both. Now, again, you get what you pay for. And so that it took them, what VADA does is they take the sample, they put it in a FedEx envelope, and they drop it off that day via FedEx. So if this was done July the 12th and the fight is on July 15th, you're supposed to have it. You should have been at the lab the next day. They might not have had the results in time for the fight, but why did it take 9 days? How did they send this test? Because they cheaped out by bringing in Drug Free Sport. Again, it's what you pay for. And this is the kind of test that should receive priority because it's right before the fight. It's one thing if this is tests that you're doing annually or every couple of months, and maybe, and there's not a fight coming up. Maybe there's not like a big rush. This should have been a big rush, and the fact that it took over 3 weeks to be, about 3 weeks to be reported, that's not that different from what goes on. But there are an awful lot of questions that went on. Everybody is like passing the buck, and these are the questions I don't see asked. Why the hell was this company used, rather than having something done through VADA and the WBC, or the commission?
And
because
why? I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish, and then I'll.
The VADA tests are known as the gold standard because of the way they do the testing and everything that goes on with that. The collection. Is Baumgardner going to say, is there a problem with the collection? Where was that sample for 9 days? Was it sitting around somewhere? This is the kind of thing they might want to start to question. And I don't know if they're going to be successful in it, but that's a red flag that it was lying around for 9 days somewhere.
Yeah, chain of custody is a huge issue. Listen, I used to do, be responsible for drug testing for contracts when I was at the fire department, and chain of custody is a huge issue.
It's huge.
But more than that, this was an undisputed bout with 4 sanctioning bodies. Where the heck, and to go back to where we started, where the heck was the governance for this fight?
Exactly.
There were 4 sanctioning bodies. Alicia Baumgardner is absolutely a member of the WBC clean boxing program. So why the heck were they bypassed? And how can we allow that in the future for this kind of caliber fight? Well, for any fight, but this caliber boxing match, you have a chain of custody that becomes questionable because you have a collection date of the 12th, and 9 days only, 9 days later, does the lab claim to have received it? Where the heck was it? Was it on ice? I mean, what are the issues just surrounding the ability to do that collection and then have that be accepted and read in the lab? Then it's finally disclosed on the 10th of August. And then how do we learn about it? We learn about it in social media because of a heck of a lot of rumors swirling around. Where the heck was Eddie Hearn? Where was Alicia Baumgardner's team? Where was the PR out ahead of this? The media outreach from Matchroom, from the sanctioning bodies who didn't even know, right? Where is the fighter and where is the promoter to say, whoops, we have a problem. This is what we're doing about it.
Right, because somebody got that letter from the drug testing company, received. Right? Saying that your fighter top dirty.
Well, right? it might have been gotten from somebody else. It was leaked by somebody to Dan Raphael. Could it come from Matchroom?
It didn't come from Matchroom. It was leaked, but there was stuff even before Dan Raphael. This stuff started early in the morning.
Yeah, but that was all. That was just internet nonsense. People just screaming without.
Yeah, but sometimes those rumblings are true.
Most of the time it's not, and you can't pay any attention to that. They didn't accuse her. For example, these clowns that were on there didn't accuse her of taking what she did test positive for: 2 anabolic agents, mesterolone and metenolone, which are both banned at all times by WADA in and out of competition. They were talking about other stuff that went on that would require a blood test. There wasn't even a blood test that was taken by Drug Free Sport. So how did they know? They were just basing on the fact that she looks muscular and putting up pictures.
But she always looks muscular. So in her case, she's always looked that's
you can't go by that.
Any attention for her to that social media stuff by people trying to get attention by just spreading any rumors. You got to look at what the facts are and what the sources are.
But the point was that, boxing media, some pretty decent folks in boxing media had a hold of this story on the morning of the 16th. And then it all came out by the middle of the afternoon. And then, we even with some kind of copy of the test.
Right.
But the point was, Matchroom was way behind way late to any kind of statement. And they should have been out ahead of it because, again, this is an undisputed bout.
Because Eddie got that letter.
Question, because of this, it calls into question her fight with Mayer in a year ago in October of 22. It calls into question her fight with Mechaled. It just takes the whole thing.
Right.
And the fact that Matchroom was not out ahead of it is a huge criticism of them all the way along. First of all, not handling the whole thing appropriately to begin with, going on the cheap with it. And secondly, not handling the blowback of what this was going to look like. And then you had all sorts of crazies coming out with all sorts of conspiracy stuff. You had Jessica McCaskill going nutty. Jeez.
People shouldn't even. Jessica McCaskill is a
Lord,
boxing analyst.
There.
She's an analyst on various fights. And within a period of 24 hours, she essentially put out 3 completely contradictory statements about this. The first was completely off the wall. So, coming up with this conspiracy theory that Matchroom somehow rigged the test
right.
to make it positive.
The craziest shit.
Then she put out a fake apology. Her first apology was seems like Matchroom has been offended by the conversation. Here we go into offended stuff. Right. It seems like the overall conversation as a whole might have been misunderstood, but either way, my apologies for the conversation and for anyone being offended by the things that I said, not retracting anything. Right. And they sent a legal letter to McCaskill. That didn't work.
And they the crap out of
ratcheted it up.
And then you don't have any money to take fucking Eddie Hearn or fight Eddie Hearn in court.
No, and then they threatened her with a lawsuit, and then it's like, oops, sorry,
shut up.
I really, I misspoke. I'm so sorry. I did not mean anything I said. Girl,
that's a second
that was the
statement.
Second one.
The second apology.
That was after Eddie Hearn absolutely burst a gut.
Right.
It said
they had a legal letter. Lawyers contacted them.
Yeah, and it's like
she said, and this was probably not even written by her. She said the statements were 100% untrue. I apologize for my statements that were made. I am sorry and apologize for the mistake.
That was
running backwards. Lawyer. That's her running
backwards. That was her lawyer running backwards and going, oh shit, please don't take my next fight away.
Right.
Which, against Sandy Ryan, which is coming up on Matchroom. Hello.
You try to get blackballed.
Jeez, come on, girl.
Right.
And he going to use her as an announcer also on fights when she has either she made a complete fool of herself and she showed no integrity or understanding of how anything works. This is just crazy stuff.
Well, yeah. And listen, Baumgardner also does commentating on DAZN.
Yeah.
And, and she was commentating on the Serrano Heather Hardy fight. And I was about as shady as I ever remember hearing towards those women, as they're like, it's like the culmination of, it's this love fest at the end of the fight. Heather has a broken nose. She had cuts everywhere. The woman is a friggin' fucking warrior, right?
She's a warrior.
We know that because we love Heather. And there's Serrano saying, you know what, sis, I got you. You help me, I'm helping you. And there is this Baumgardner going, but what about me? When are you going to fight me? And Serrano's like, ignores her. It's like, it's about me and Heather, I'm here to support Heather and sisterhood in boxing.
Right. And we'll get to you later because I think Amanda will fight Baumgardner at some point.
And then Baumgardner's
Baumgardner's going to get suspended.
They're afraid. She doesn't want to fight me.
Baumgardner's going to be suspended very likely.
But that's only if her B sample comes back.
But me.
That always is the same. That's not an issue.
But she was still on social media the last day oh, I'm gonna get your ass, Ronald. She was ignoring the whole thing. She's like, oh no, there's nothing wrong. I'm fine. I'm clean. I don't know why it came back like that. Hey, Amanda, hello, I'm here. I'm gonna fight you.
But there's another
is
aspect
crazy.
to this too, that this is the second championship women's fight in a row in Detroit
Yep.
where you've had a change of opponent or a positive drug test,
Positive
because
test.
Clarissa
Yeah.
Shields was supposed to fight Hannah Gabriels, and that
Yep.
was built up as a rematch they had fought a few years ago. And while Shields won, she was knocked down by
Yep.
Gabriels, and so she wanted to really avenge that. And the excuse that was given for she tested positive for clostebol, which is a testosterone derivative. Lou DiBella said about Hannah Gabriels, her dog had made, I'm not making this up,
No, I know.
her
It was the
dog
dog.
had
The dog ate
major,
it.
her dog had major abdominal surgery,
Yeah.
and somehow the medication for the dog got in Hannah
Transferred to
Gabriel's
her.
bloodstream.
Come on now.
Yeah, that was that. But look, it was before it was, and they found another opponent and they did their thing. And Lou, of course, is Christina Linardatu's
Yeah.
promoter, and he was just all over it. It's like, are you kidding me?
So what's going to happen now of that Baumgardner pops positive? Let's say she does get
Well, all the
suspended. Does she lose
sanctioning,
her belt?
There'll have to be a hearing
there'll
with the
be a
Michigan
hearing,
Commission,
Michigan
because they're
Commission.
they're the ones, the regulatory body in this. They're going
And
to have
then
some kind of hearing, and knowing the Michigan Commission, who knows when that will happen, under what conditions,
under what
and
condition?
who knows what kind of defense Baumgartner is going to make, because she came out with the usual statement of these drug cheats. See, I never heard of this stuff. I never took any of this stuff. I would never take anything. I would never do anything like
That's
this.
what they
And
all say.
yeah, but if you want to watch an interesting documentary, on Netflix, there's a documentary on Victor Conti now that documents a whole lot of this stuff. And it's some of the it's I have a lot of criticism of that documentary, but you'll see a lot of that footage of Marion Jones and Tim Armstrong
Right.
and a lot of these people just denying, no, I'm sorry, Tim Montgomery, denying all these different things, denying that they ever used PEDs and all of this,
Yeah,
and
well, that's where
screaming.
Baumgartner is now. And in terms of the sanctioning bodies, there's four, and they'll each look into it. Look, Eddie, you read off what the WBC put out, WBA, IFB, I'm sorry, IBF and WBO will all, I guess, look into it themselves. She may or may not face suspension from one or more of the sanctioning bodies. WBC,
They
which
can't
is
they can't suspend her. They don't have jurisdiction on that. They have jurisdiction the only thing they have jurisdiction is on the belts. They can strip
that's what
her
I
of the
mean. They
belts.
strip that
But
would
if
be
she
that's what
has
I
to be
mean. Suspend the belt.
suspended, the hearing is going to be determined
Right. Yeah.
by the
Hearing.
Michigan Commission.
Right. But in terms of what the sanctioning bodies will do, they can strip her of her belt if they make that determination in their own. But we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, she's just acting like everything's fine.
Right.
And she put out pictures of herself as a 7-year-old with muscles. We already know the woman is a muscular girl. I mean, look, people's bodies are different. There are people who have very, women who have just naturally very muscular.
Right.
That's just their bodies, low body fat. She's always been muscular. Whether she tweaks it a little or what that is all about, what that juicing may be all about, we do not know. But you can't, just because a woman has muscles doesn't mean they're all dirty and juicy.
Well, that's true, because she was accused of taking human growth hormone. People have been saying that for a while.
But
And
I
then
don't
not
know.
providing and
knowing
not
shit.
providing any evidence.
Right, not knowing shit.
I wouldn't even dignify those comments
You can't.
unless people provide some evidence. And it was by trolls that don't like her. Whether if it's true, present some evidence. And it
Right.
ignored the stuff where there is evidence. We're starting to see more and more positive drug tests in women's boxing. This is
Mhm.
something, that you should just see with men's boxing. There was another championship fight a couple of years ago when, if you remember, Alejandra Jimenez fought, and she had been a WBC heavyweight champion. Then she lost a lot of weight, went down to super middleweight, and
Right.
she defeated Franchon Cruz de Zern, but was stripped of that
She was
because she
yep.
failed a drug test. And there was a lot of controversy at the time, if you remember, because of her appearance, and a lot of misogynists saying she's really a man and all kinds of nonsense that went on. It was just really disgusting. But some people had sympathy for her, some people were haters. Then when the positive drug test came, that was the end of it, of any credibility for her. You don't hear about her anymore.
Yeah,
Right. She
there's a
probably
lot of
retired.
sympathy, around social media for Baumgardner. There was a whole on Facebook. There's been on the WBAN site, Women's Boxing Archive Network, and with Supebox and all those folks. There's been a very, very lively discussion of,
Supportive.
essentially, in a lot of cases, supportive of her, or
Right.
saying, "Hey, let's get to see all the facts." She said she tested negative after, but nobody's seen those tests. So there's a lot that needs to be teased out. But I think the more important issue, which again, I'll go back to what Eddie started this conversation with, is without governance and without a real without rules that we live by in terms of drug testing for every fight,
Right.
we run into this mess all the time, whether it's men's
Because
boxing or women's.
and this is exactly why the promoters keep the setup that they have: weak local commissions. Even in the UK, we have the British Boxing Board of Control. A lot of people say the US should have a national commission. Well, look what's happened in Britain. They have a national commission there, and it's one mess after another. If you look at the whole Conor Benn situation, how they took 2 years a couple of years ago to deal with the positive drug tests for Tyson Fury and Yui Fury, and only gave him a suspension after Tyson Fury sat out 2 years with his own physical and mental problems. And it was sort of like an ex post facto suspension. So he ended up really not missing any time that he wouldn't have missed anyway, because obviously he's a big draw. And now with the Conor Benn situation, that UK anti-doping wants to keep him suspended, but they can't because you had a national anti-doping panel, which is above that. And the British Boxing Board of Control says, wait a minute, we're the ones that regulate, we're the ones that are governing body for boxing, but apparently they're not. There's something over them, and it's utter chaos. And right now, Conor Benn could come back and fight again. It's utter, and the WBC defended Conor Benn also. It's just the wild, wild west.
It is.
And they keep it this way. Why? Because Tyson Fury is popular. People will watch him and sell tickets. Same thing with Conor Benn. He's popular, at least in the UK. He's popular. He's well known. And Nigel Benn's son. All of the history that is again very well known among fight people there, because it's based on money and popularity that went on. They could sacrifice at Alejandro Jimenez, but when it comes to Tyson Fury or Conor Benn, well, then we have different rules.
Although the BBBFC did appeal, and Conor Benn just came out with a sad sack statement a couple of days ago, but they did appeal it. So we'll see whether the BBFC will prevail. Probably not, but they did make a strong case to keep
my opinion for a long time is this: This will not be settled within boxing. People running boxing are not going to get together and create some kind of overall governance. It's only going to be settled internationally and from the outside. And it's going to take a long while, and it's going to have to be part of a process to create some kind of world anti-corruption agency of some sort or another, which the people that play the game are discussing. But right now, those are discussions mainly between journalists and academics and all of that, and how to set something like that up. It has to be independent from the sports organizations, because the sports organizations have shown every single day of the year that they're incapable of properly regulating themselves. There's all kinds of nonsense that continually goes on, particularly in a sport of boxing. It's going to have to come from the outside, but boxing is going to be among the last of the sports that gets regulated by that. And even in the United States, you have these other sports, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, they're basically self-regulating. They will have drug-free sport do the testing, but in terms of the decisions and the rules and all that, that's done in-house and internally, and they're trying to maintain some credibility there. Boxing really doesn't care about that. It's the scandal of the week, and next week, or this week, or next week, it'll be something else. And so Baumgardner could come out with these ridiculous statements. McCaskill could come out with this ridiculous statement, and this is par for the course in boxing. And you see people defending Baumgardner. How do they explain that she had a positive test for 2 anabolic steroids? How did that
one, but
get in
two.
there? Right. But wait, not just one, but wait, there's more.
Right. And that shows me that comes with stacking, right? You're stacking anabolic steroids, and it probably just didn't flush from her system fast enough.
It didn't flush fast enough, which is why it was clean after the fight.
Right.
And
4 or 5 days later.
Right.
She got the cycling wrong. Well, she could be microdosing. I don't know if you could do it with these drugs, but a lot of athletes have been doing microdosing. They've been taking masking agents, which you have to specifically test for.
Right.
It's, we don't know all the details of this other than she's been caught with this. And even if it turns out that these were from contaminated supplements, it's in her body. You have strict liability. If that stuff is in your body, you are responsible for it, even if you didn't know that you were taking it, which means that at the time of the fight, whether she knew it or whether she didn't know it, she had the effects of this stuff.
That was an issue that Heather Hardy had before the Serrano fight in 2019. She was taking a medication for period weight, water for periods, and didn't really understand that it was on the test. She ended up paying a fine. I mean, they accepted it, and she was very upfront about it. She paid a fine for it. It was a very minor kind of thing, but she didn't even know it was on the list. And that is the responsibility of the boxer and the boxer's team.
At least the trainer, right, should be understanding.
The team has to understand what's on these tests.
Right.
And that was
and what medications and supplements.
What medications, what supplements, what you may be taking, just as part of your normal medication on a monthly basis, once a month or whatever. And not understanding that it's on a list of, or there's an ingredient that's on that list. You can't say, "Oh, I didn't know." It was your business to know. And Heather was very upfront about it and paid the fine.
That's an easy excuse for a lot of these teams. There's no reason to say you didn't know.
You have to know. It's your job to know.
Yeah, I don't buy this stuff, because all this stuff is online. You could Google it and find it in 2 seconds.
Exactly. Right.
You could find all the different versions every year. The WADA updates its list. You could find all this stuff out pretty easily, because they're going online and buying these steroids and these illegal substances. So they know how to do that, but they don't know how to find out, what's banned and what's not banned and what you need therapeutic use exemption for and all this kind of stuff. I just don't buy this. And the understanding of the governance is reflected the reaction to Baumgardner. Baumgardner denies anything. I compared it to the old gangster movies, where the gangs go, you never catch me, copper. That type of a thing with that statement. And what McCaskill put out, and even Clarissa Shields is defending Baumgardner. There's no understanding of how this stuff is done.
Well, I think you have to, at this point, give her the benefit of the doubt, right? Because
why? Why should you get the benefit
because
of the doubt?
it's not been concluded yet. They still
it's been concluded.
Listen, I'm saying the first sample. Usually I'm not saying shit until the second sample. Once the second sample comes back, and it usually always comes back positive, then you can say, okay, this girl needs to be suspended for PED use, whether she knew what she was taking or not. But right now, until all the second test has come back, I'm not going to say for sure, because we don't know for sure if the second test comes back positive. So
and even if it's
her
negative,
the benefit
there's a
of the
question.
doubt.
There's always a question.
Now she's right. There's an asterisk next to her name now, because now we all side eyeing her ass, right? But at least now in public, the women in boxing are going to support this woman, and I don't have a problem with that. But if the second,
why should you support her?
Why
you're
not?
innocent because you're
not?
innocent until proven guilty. But now we got a smoking gun.
Okay, and the smoking gun has not been until that second sample comes back. I say give the woman the benefit of the doubt, let her claim
She's
whatever.
not even calling for a second sample. She's saying she didn't do anything.
That should be standard procedure. If your positive sample comes, the A sample comes back positive, the B sample needs to be tested automatically.
So the second test that was taken at the time, you mean?
Right, that B sample
just to
needs
clarify
to be
what you're saying.
No, it's from the same. It's from the same sample.
Batch. So in other words, when you do the test, you're supposed to have two draws, two of those tests, an A and a B taken at the same time.
Right.
You test the A, it comes back positive. You test the B, which you've had. And again, this is all this chain of custody stuff we were talking about earlier. It should have been in the chain of custody. It then gets tested. If it also shows the same result as the A test, boom. And
when has it ever been different?
But still, you got to give the people the benefit of the doubt, and you can't just hang them out there right this second in public. I get it. I get why they're all coming to her defense right now, because
they're coming to her defense, not saying let's wait for the B sample. They're saying
that's what I read.
No, they're saying they don't believe that she took this stuff.
No, I saw Clarissa's post that said, let's wait till everything comes out, and I agree with that.
That was her post. But also, her team was also really strong on the fact that they're hugely in WBC, anti-doping program, and what they do ahead of their tests. And look, they've been working really hard to bring boxing back to Michigan to kind of get that back full circle. And now this totally screws it. This totally screws it.
I think Detroit will survive.
Yeah, they'll survive. But
they had a mayor go to jail for all kinds of shit, so they'll survive.
I know.
Boxing was really out of Michigan for
now
boxing
it's
for a long period of time. She
still got Clarissa. They still got the GWOAT. So
they got the GWOAT, and they got Salida Promotions is really doing a lot to bring boxing back to Detroit. They're promoting a lot of their fights there.
Good.
But it's a mess.
It is a mess. We need to clean up the sport.
We have to do better.
We have to clean
up the sport. We have to come make a decision and just say, damn it, if you're going to have boxing, you're going to pay for it.
That's right.
And maybe work with WAAR or all the organizations, get reasonable costs. Because if you have more people test, then you have reasonable costs. And you can
most people in boxing in the so-called media don't even know what WAAR stands for. They can't even get what the initials stand for. I see all over the place on these so-called media sites, calling it a voluntary anti-doping agency. It's not an agency. It's never been called that. It's a voluntary anti-doping association because it's not a government or official agency. That's why it's voluntary, because the official agencies like USADA and all that are full of shit. And they're either incompetent or corrupt or corrupt. But you don't. But when you put that, you don't even know what you're talking about. You have no idea if you can't get what the significance of that name is. It's just utter stupidity. The level of discussion about boxing is just incredibly stupid. I don't see that with other mainstream sports, and that's why I go back to sports management. The people that want to do this as a profession, they're not going to go to a sport like boxing. You're going to get people, you're going to get the hustlers, you're going to get people that just are not particularly competent. You're going to get all sorts of types coming into boxing. And the whole milieu is just corrupt. And the media now is more and more corrupt. The newspapers, a lot of problems when the newspapers dominated. Now you don't have any newspapers regularly employing on staff boxing writers, and you have somebody with a couple of grand to kill, and they set up a podcast in their home somewhere, and they get up and talk, and they put on a baseball cap and a T-shirt, and they yell and scream, and they laugh with the fighters.
That's me.
And that's just, that's passed off as media, that people don't understand the basic things, the basic tenets of journalism. That's what's out there. It's a total wreck, and that's why I say it's not going to come from inside boxing. There are a couple of people that want to do something. It's not going to come from inside boxing, as boxing circles down the drain anyway. The only way it's going to be change is going to come in the sports world in general and internationally. And that's a big task that's going to really take a long time to be affected, if it's ever affected under the political and economic system that we have.
Right. Well, we're going to keep pushing and keep talking about this stuff because it is important. Sports we need governance, and we need transparency in the sport. We need a NBA too. That's a National Boxing Association. For real, to I think that would help the industry a lot.
Tremendously.
Tremendously. And then it's you'd have I think a better organization, better quality organization, and you could have standardized testing that just comes along with it, as part of the protocol. So let's keep pushing for that, folks. In the meantime, we are going to wrap up this show. Melissa, I know you are over there pegging away at your new book, but if you guys, that's right. I want you to get on it and meet that deadline. All right.
I know. I'm writing my behind off. It's hard.
Actually, what's the name of the book?
Writing about it. It's the working title is The Promise of Women's Boxing. It covers the last 10 years of the sport. I'm trying to, tease out some of these issues, but I'm also trying to tease out the women in the sport that don't get the attention. I've just written a chapter about fighters like Ava Knight and Alicia West and Melissa McMorrow from out in California, who were boxing during this whole period of time. Some of them as late as 2018. Ava Knight was boxing until 2021 when she had babies. Going to probably jump back into the sport. They were the champions. They were the ones holding the big belts, but they couldn't fight in America. They were crazy. Going to Mexico, going to Germany. That's the only way they were able to fight. They could never have those big fights here. So I'm also amplifying them, as well as the stars of boxing that we've come to know, like Clarissa Shields and Katie Taylor and all those Olympians. But it's also about the everyday fighters and what they have to go through.
Right on. Fantastic. All right, Eddie, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
Yeah, check out my Patreon. You want to read stuff that's intelligent, go to patreon.com/Eddie Goldman and subscribe. to support independent journalism. You don't really have this anymore. You don't have intelligent discussion anymore. You have nonsense that goes on social media, and these people just doing these softball interviews and flirting with the fighters and all kinds of other nonsense that you see going on. And my website's eddiegoldman.com. I'm still on Twitter for the time being. That's really headed down the tank. Now they want to get rid of a block button, and it's not clear if that will get them kicked off of the Apple's App Store and Google Play, which require that apps that have commentary have the ability to block people who promote malicious content on there. That's not clear if that refers to users or the site itself, but it's going to drive more advertisers and users away. And frankly, I don't see any real alternative at this point that's viable, particularly if you're going to discuss sports and boxing, and some of these other sites of political discussion is just so basic and rudimentary. I don't even see it worthwhile being involved in them. And then you got the new Threads, which doesn't want political discussion and apparently is downgrading news and political discussion through the
That's
algorithm.
All there is there, though.
That's all there is
there, though. That's all I see.
Right, because we have our own. We've created our own community of political, progressive, democracy-focused individuals. So that's all I see.
That's all I see is.
Yep, that's
politics.
all I see. I love it, and I love it. Oh, you know what, Melissa? We did not tell the people where they can find you. You make sure you give out your handle.
Oh yeah. I'm at Girl Boxing now on Twitter, on Threads, on Spoutable even. I'm trying them all, and of course my website girlboxing.com.
Right on. Well, look, folks, that's gonna be it for today. You guys can find me still on Twitter. Damn it. I hate that I'm still on Twitter at Angry Afro Radio, but I am on Threads. That is my home. That's where I love my people. Big shout out to all my Thread family out there. I'm at Fight Goddess 1 on Instagram and Threads. And until the next time, you guys make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe to our page and check out our website. That's warsports.com. Until the next time, peace, love, and push-ups.